All right, the next table we're going to be looking at is category. So you can look at the documentation in here, and we're going to dive into Power BI and look at what's in this table. So as you can see, the category table is actually quite narrow. It's a bit long with around 900 values, but there's not a whole lot in here, so this should go pretty quickly. Now in here, we are using the built-in categories. So it's going to say OST views, etc. This allows us to support categories no matter the language because internally Revit always uses these OST categories. So as usual, if you want to count the number of categories, you can do that. For example, if you have a material and you want to see how many categories have this material, you can drag the keys under each material of the categories and count those keys. And then, for example, if your concrete is in floors and doors and ceilings, well, it's going to say 3 categories for the material concrete. So that's one way that you can use the category keys here. The built-in is the built-in name. The category tag is extremely important. This is probably going to be the most important thing in this tutorial after the name full. What it is something that Vim has created. So it allows you to split things per categorization. Now, the most useful is going to be the physical category, right? These are things that you actually build. These are things that are physical. And then there's things like annotations or concepts. So phases, levels, materials, shaft opening, massing lines, curtain wall, hidden lines. These are not things you want to count, right? Nobody's counting, nobody's building a hidden line and flex duct tags. These are all concepts. So they're there, you can poke at them, but generally we're just going to focus on what matters. And, you know, the naming is pretty obvious. So links versus groups versus all of these things. So if you want to kind of poke around in your model, what you can do is simply drag the category tag in here right above your category name. And now you're going to see what all of these things have. And usually what you're going to do is also add a filter to your entire table, not your entire report, but your entire table, let's say. And you're going to say, hey, all I care about here is physical and maybe topography. And once you've added the filter, like, you know, if I don't have like rooms, for example, because it could be confusing to just mix rooms and physical stuff. But if I don't have the rooms table, well, I don't need the category tag anymore. I'm just going to go right into my actual category of data. Okay, so category tag, extremely important. You're going to use that pretty much on every single report. In this case, we're actually using a discipline. Now, this is going to be mostly for physical items. And we'll have another video on discipline. It's something that you can change. But what we can see from the discipline is that certain elements can be in more than one discipline. So for example, this is why we see a duplication of the keys. So the electrical equipment can be part of electrical. It can also be part of architectural. So the discipline is something that can be changed. I wouldn't use it until you understand how to change the discipline and make it your own. There's probably other smarter ways of adding a specialized category to everything and then using that for your discipline, because things like generic models, things like specialty item, those are going to be too cross-discipline to be accurate. Okay, here we have a measure. This tells us in how many models our category is present. So for example, if there's light fixture in the architectural and the electrical model, we can focus on that and it's going to say 2 in this column. So it's important to identify these things. For example, if you have columns in the architecture and columns in the structure, well, this could be a problem area that you want to really tightly look at. So you can ignore things here that say 0 and maybe focus on things that say 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, let's talk about the name. The way that Revit gives us the data is there's a name and then there's a parent name. And it's going to become apparent that this data can be improved. And spoiler alert, what we're going to want to look at is the name full. So let's look at things that have a parent name and we'll figure out why it's great that we have the name full here. So the original name was reveals. And then the other name here is wall sweeps. These are both wall things. Actually, let's just filter by name full, and it'll become more obvious why certain things are useful. So let's go look at stairs. Actually, railing is a good example. So if we were to use the original name in our alphabetical list, we'd have balusters, handrails, rails, support, terminations, top rail. So it would be all over the place. And same things for roofs and same things for stairs. We'd have landings and runs and supports and all of these things all over the place. And Revit also says, hey, by the way, some of these categories have a parent, but like, landings are part of stairs, runs are part of stairs. So what we've done is we've concatenated these things. And what it allows us to do is sort them together. So all the stair stuff goes together when you make a list about stairs. So I don't recommend using the name original, but you can. You can also use it with the parent name. So when there is a parent, it's going to come together like this. So, a bunch of stuff don't have parents, so they show up in this list, which is not great. And then if we drill down here, well, these are all the orphans, if you will, the things without parents. And there we go. When we scroll down, we see the things for abutments. We see the things for adaptive points. We see the things for analytical surfaces. This is not great. And not using the parent is also not great because then you're going to have to remember where are the 5 or 7 or 8 components related to stairs. Whereas if we do the exact same thing, but we simply use the name full column, everything's going to be grouped together. I'm just going to limit this page to look at the physical things first. So here we go, right? So structural connections, anchors. Instead of just anchors being at the top here with the A's, like a little weird orphan, we are grouping it with the proper categories here with the proper parent. So with that being said, I would not recommend using the name original. I would not recommend using the parent name. They are there if you want to use them, but generally when we talk about category, we're going to be using name full. And here's a final column. I guess this is just coming from Revit. It's giving us only 2 options, analytical model or model. So it seems like the only thing under analytical model is OSD analytical panel. So that's just weird. I'm going to say it's pretty safe. You can ignore this column if you don't care about it. You can even just hide it here. I doubt you will get any value from this column. We may even want to delete it in the future evolutions of our data model. So that's it for the category. One thing to remember, category tag and name full, that's going to be your workhorse columns from this table. All right, that's it. Let's move on to the next one. Talk to you soon. Cheers.